Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as gives us bread, such a truth as ends all strife, such a life as giveth death. Come my light, my peace, my strength, such a light as shows a feast, such a feast as mends in length, such a strength as makes a guest. Come my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such a love as none can part, such a heart as joys in love.
We have no idea what actually happened on that chilly November in 1774 when John Murray and Judith Sargent first laid eyes on each other. But something happened, something electric for both of them.
John had been traveling for over 3 years as an itinerant preacher, spreading the good news of Universalists in New Jersey, New York, and New England. He was weary of his travels.
And Judith, in Gloucester, had been attending meetings in her family home organized by her father, Winthrop Sargent, who had embraced Universalism and wished to share his adopted faith with others. So when he learned that John Murray, the star of the movement, was in Boston, Winthrop Sargent invited him to Gloucester.
John Murray entered the Sargent's best parlor on November 3rd, no doubt looking forward to greeting Mr. Sargent and warming himself by the fire as they discussed Universalist theology. He probably expected it to be like any other such meeting, but this one was different because when he walked through that door, he saw her.
Judith was 23 years old, lovely, self-confident, intellectually curious, devoted to her chosen faith, and married.
John was a robust 33, a man whose charismatic presence and outgoing personality dominated any room. And he was a widower who had lost both his wife and child in England.
We don't know what they said to each other, but a few days later, setting propriety aside, Judith sat down at her writing desk to pen her first letter to John.
My dear sir, if I am not mistaken in the character of the person I have the pleasure to address, it will be most agreeable to him that I should lay aside all that awe and reverence which his unquestionable superiority demands, and approach him with the freedom of a sister conversing with a brother whom she entirely esteems. I am not much accustomed to writing letters, especially to your sex, but if there be neither male nor female in the manual you promulgate, we may surely, and with the strictest propriety, mingle souls upon paper.
Judith and John became devoted to each other as pastor and congregant and as dear friends. Judith helped him establish the first Universalist church in America, in Gloucester. John boarded with Judith and her husband, John Stevens, when he wasn't at sea, in her mansion on Middle Street. But John Murray was often traveling and organizing Universalism far away from Gloucester. During one such long absence, Judith wrote to him.
My dear sir, and art thou then gone, to be here no more? Forbid it, ye guardian spirits, whom we devoutly implore to shield our revered friend, and to protect him in this his tour of benevolence. Slow, sad, and solemn did yesterday descend among the periods now no more, In vain we strayed in pursuit of peace among all the apartments of this solitary and now frightfully spacious abode. Alas, the heavenly descendant, sweet peace, had made one in the train of departed friendship. The room allotted to you appeared a dreary desert. Deep glooms brooded there, and your empty chair stared upon us, wildly vacant. Through respect, as if by general consent, your seat was left empty. By mistake, a cover was placed for you. Fortunate accident. I will improve upon it. My table shall continue its accustomed order, nor shall anyone occupy the vacant chair. Thus I will indulge my feelings until you again fill the appropriated spot. Should you no more return, I cannot help it. It is in vain I enlist reason and fortitude. Friendship, bereaved friendship, demands its dues.
Sadly, like so many ship owners during the Revolutionary War, John Stevens' finances collapsed and he faced debtor's prison. John Murray did everything he could to help him, but to no avail.
John Stevens fled Gloucester one night for the West Indies, leaving Judith poor, sick, and alone with her adopted daughter. A year later, Judith received news that her husband had died. She was now widowed and poor.
And while she was now free to marry John Murray, he had been advised by the Gloucester Universalists to leave town. His ministry and his safety were at risk. But before he sailed for England to visit his family to preach, he boldly wrote to Judith and asked her to marry him.
Judith described her feelings to her aunt, Mary Turner Sargent.
Just at this juncture, I received a letter from Mr. Murray. It informed me that delicate attention to my honor and feelings had kept him silent, but driven malice of his enemies from the continent, he could not depart without disclosing to me the treasured secret of his soul. He might thus risk the happiness of his life. He could not but indulge a hope that domestic felicity might yet be his. He acknowledged that he had long loved me, even from the commencement of our acquaintance, with ardor, loved me, but that he would have sacrificed his life rather than have admitted a thought in this regard to me. But that, as I had now, for many months, been released from my early vows, he presumed to calculate upon a favorable hearing, and to supplicate at least for a continuation of my esteem. I was now, you will allow, furnished with a fresh motive for admiration of him, who had at length avowed himself my lover.
To John, she wrote.
Upwards of 13 years have elapsed since your first visit to this then happy village. And in all that period, 3 successive weeks have not revolved without bringing us letters, acquainting us with your movements, your well-being, your hopes, your fears. Now, alas, what a long and dreary season is before us. The great waters are between us. Suspense corrodes our peace. Our comfortless spirits sicken at uncertainty. In the last charming beam of hope, we are but too ready to yield. Your letters, penned when last in Boston Harbor, dear pledges of virtuous friendship, affectionately and delicately conceived, are calculated to soothe my soul. Soft and gentle in their language, and most humane was the purpose of their writer. Often I've wet them with my tears. I've thrown my eyes around this deserted apartment. It is shockingly wild. Its very atmosphere seems impregnated with melancholy. My books, they cease to amuse. My pen, it is not now productive of pleasure. This despondency, will not, however, continue. Nature, quite exhausted, will either sink in the struggle, or my mind asserting itself will rise superior to the dense clouds in which it is at present enveloped. Excuse me, dear sir. If this paper meets your eye, excuse your friend. She is this day uncommonly low, and you must tolerate her complaints.
When it was safe for John to return to Gloucester, Judith wrote to him.
Now hold the pen with very different sensations from those which have heretofore agitated my bosom. My dear, my protecting friend is returning. There's no longer a necessity for his banishment, and I shall be, in short, I shall be very happy. 1,000 times a day do I whisper the tidings to my soul. My heart, my fond heart, throbs with esteem and gratitude hourly augmenting, and the pleasing perturbation of the little flutterer seems to render it too big for its enclosure. I will unwaringly believe that I shall pass with him, ere yet I depart the world of spirits some tranquil days. I cannot write. A kind of pleasing tumult takes possession of my soul, destroying that composure which is necessary for the purpose of arranging my thoughts. Yet I ought to write, and this letter is intended to meet you in Boston. Welcome, then, my dearest friend. Thou art right welcome to the soul of thy Constantia.
When John returned, they made plans to marry, and sailed that Judith's siblings did not approve of the marriage.
For Judith, this marriage was very different from her first one, as she explained to Mary Turner Sargent.
I was early, very early, united in marriage to a worthy man. His virtues were many, and I justly esteemed the husband which fate had given me. Yet, though greatly sensible of his worth, my ungovernable heart refused to acknowledge the softer emotions. I believed myself incapable of love, as traced by the pencil of the poet. In the misfortunes of Mr. Stevens, I took my full share, and I lamented with the deepest agony the melancholy catastrophe of his life. But my serenity returned, and as I had often thought and frequently expressed my sentiments, that after having worn the nuptial chain, and Providence had sundered the bond, a subsequent life of retirement and freedom was most proper. But the event which banished Mr. Murray from America effectively removed the veil. I was solicitous to yield in person that relief which the balm of sacred friendship might supply, and that I was denied the privilege of sympathizing with a man whom I so much esteemed and revered was to be an agonizing consideration. In short, I could no longer deceive myself. My soul became a scene of tumult, and upon every rising thought was stamped too sure a confirmation that I had, in fact, become a slave to the most impetuous of all passions, of which I had erroneously considered myself incapable.
They were indeed very happily married, as she told him.
I cannot express the pleasing and endearing sense I entertain of your affectionate attention. You contrive to invalidate the most respectable testimonies, and, the experience of ages notwithstanding, it must be pronounced that matrimony does not always create a tyrant, that in one instance at least the husband hath continued the lover. Your actions are descriptive of affection. Your letters breathe the very soul of tenderness, and, as they are doubtless warm from the heart, they can hardly fail of producing, in the bosom of gratitude, a correspondent effect. Yes, best of men, I am yours in every sense of the word, and may I cease to breathe ere I cease to acknowledge your unvarying and faithful regards. May God forever bless you. So praise, with unabating fervor, your tenderly affectionate and ever faithful wife.
Not many letters remain from the pen of John Murray, but this one written to his uncle in 1779 about Judith contains both the emotional trauma that the couple endured and a graphic account of the dangers of childbirth for women in early America.
First Saturday in August, our suffering friend was taken ill. She continued to suffer more than any language can describe until the Wednesday night following. She was then, with the assistance of Dr. Plummer and his instruments, delivered of a male child weighing very near 15 pounds. Whose spirit returned to the God who gave it a few hours before it was born. Now we flattered ourselves that the worst was over, but alas, never did a woman suffer more than she has suffered ever since. Near 3 weeks, we were obliged to have 3 nurses. 4 weeks, we were obliged to have 2. I am not able to make you acquainted with her complaints. Sufficient to say that for many weeks her life was despaired of. And day and night she suffered the most excruciating tortures. She's not yet able to sit on any seat but one which she is often obliged to use. And with great difficulty she can walk from there to her bed, which she can neither enter nor leave without assistance. And pain. And God only knows whether she will ever be well. However, I am encouraged to hope. I'm willing to hope. She would do better now, was it not for the swelling in her legs. Her leg is larger than her father's thigh. But Dr. Plummer assures us that she will, in time, have all of her complaints behind her.
In spite of her near-fatal illness, Judith published a dozen poems and her seminal essay on the equality of the sexes in the year following their son's death. Over a decade later, their daughter Maria was born in August of 1791.
They enjoyed 27 years of happy married life. They became parents and grandparents.
And they helped raise numerous nieces, nephews, and the children of friends.
They worked hard, each in their own way, to expand universalism and to dispel the dark clouds of Calvinism. They worked for equality.
For women to participate equally as citizens. For the next generation of writers, ministers, and activists.
Sadly, John Murray suffered a debilitating stroke in 1809. During his illness, when Judith canceled her annual family visit to Gloucester, he insisted that she go, writing to her with regret for how difficult he had made her life.
She responded,
Dear, my beloved, my venerable sufferer, who says that you have not been made to me an instrument of great good? And who says that you ought to be second to any in my gratitude and in my affection? Was it not by your mouth that our God and Father thought best to show me the way of life more perfectly? And is there not many a denunciation, which being found in the Holy Writ, would have harrowed upon my affrighted soul, had not thy irradiated mind, by dispersing the clouds, produced the luminous comment replete with peace, life, and happiness. Are you not the father of my child? Can there be a more excellent thing? Do I not enjoy in her that desideration for which my soul long languished, and which I have hailed as heaven's best gift? Away then with every recurrence to accidental evils, to the thorn in the flesh, to human frailties, from which no mortal is exempt. What are the fading evils of time to the substantial felicity in possession and reversion of which you have been made to me, the beloved medium? Talk not of forgiveness, of offenses, or of pardon, but let us mutually bear and forbear, and let us hand in hand pursue the rugged path which yet remains, until we arrive at that beatified state where sin nor sorrow will no more invade, and where we shall be completely blessed. I am happy to find your approbation of your child so unreserved. She does indeed merit every effort which we can make in her favor, and I persuade myself you will, in every particular, discharge to her the whole duty of a father. I rejoice your airing in the carriage was so refreshing, and I trust my poor, way-worn sufferer will find many resting places on the road in which he can sincerely say, "It is good for me to be here." May God forever bless you. I am truly your faithful and affectionate wife.
John Murray died in 1815, almost 6 years since his stroke. He was buried in Boston's Granary Burying Ground.
In 1818, Judith moved to Natchez, Mississippi with her daughter, who had married a Harvard student from there, and her granddaughter. Judith died a little over a year later and lies buried in a private family cemetery in Natchez. She had wanted to die in the bed she shared with her husband in Boston, but it was not meant to be.
Their bodies may be separated by almost 1,400 miles, but we know that they are together in the next world, and here with all of us today because of what they did.
Judith, as the most important female essayist of her time, made this country a better place for women, for girls, and for aspiring American writers.
John would forever be known as the father of organized American Universalism and a champion of religious freedom whose work to ground religion in love impacted many faith traditions.
They were equal partners who loved, respected, and supported each other while they were on their shared path of duty.
They had what we all want, and for that reason, theirs is truly a timeless love story.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when dark clouds like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught. help me to say, it is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. So oft I lose sight of the grander tapestry, the pieces obscuring the whole. 'Tis then that I summon from deep memory, it is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well